Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has officially entered the race for the 2024 Republican presidential nomination.
We held the line when freedom hung in the balance. We showed that we can and must revitalize America. We need the courage to lead and the strength to win. I'm Ron DeSantis, and I'm running for president to lead our great American comeback. Success is attainable.
DeSantis was supposed to make the announcement during a conversation on Twitter Spaces with CEO Elon Musk, but that proved to be a disaster with the platform repeatedly crashing. DeSantis is seen as the biggest challenger to former U.S. President Donald Trump's bid for the GOP nomination. He's known as a cultural conservative who's made legislation targeting the LGBT community a big part of his agenda. And for more on this, I'm joined live by Michael Fontroy, Associate Professor of Policy and Government and Director of the Race, Politics, and Policy Center at George Mason University. Thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
First, I'd like to get your thoughts on the way DeSantis is making this announcement on Twitter with Elon Musk, but then on top of that, as we had just mentioned, marred with technical glitches too. And when it comes to optics in presidential politics, this isn't a good start.
Well, it's not, but I want to give you some context here. So for years and years, the tradition has been the candidate will invite a bunch of supporters to come for a rally. There'll be media there to cover it, and it's the candidate saying, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and the other guy's a bum or something along those lines, right? And in recent years, with the information age exploding as it has, some candidates have begun to announce in different ways, whether it's a video that they record on Twitter or something along those lines. This is the next step along that road, and I think it's really intended to try to show DeSantis as being someone who is much more focused on connecting directly with the citizens rather than going through what he would call a media filter. Having said all that, it was a disastrous launch because of the various technical problems that they had. Twitter has had as many as 3 million people sit in one Twitter Spaces session. This one was about 600,000, and for whatever reason, they just couldn't get it together. And for more than 30 minutes, there was a bunch of technical problems that really took the steam out of the event.
No doubt, for the several months ahead, there'll be many combative months with former President Donald Trump. He's been the overwhelming frontrunner, and we're just talking about Republican voters here. So what does DeSantis need to do to make any headway with Republican voters, specifically against Trump?
Well, he's got to do at least two things, one of which is something he can do, and the other thing is something he hopes can be done. What he can do is try to make the case as the #1 alternative to Trump. That is to say, out of all the other people who are running, DeSantis says, I am the one who is most likely to defeat Trump and defeat Biden in a general election. Now, the hope side is he has to hope that there are some of these investigations bear additional fruit and that Donald Trump finds himself enmeshed in all kinds of trials and responses to the trials throughout the rest of the year, thereby weakening him in early 24 as a viable candidate for the presidency.
Now, DeSantis, as governor, has made a point of going after LGBTQ issues, abortion issues, and focusing on many cultural divisive issues that may play well in large swaths of Florida. But how can he take that message now to a broader, a national audience?
Well, I'm not sure that he can, but before he takes it to a broader general election audience, he has to actually win the nomination. And there's unfortunately too much of an appetite in the United States for a lot of this culture war stuff that he is making very clear he's going to run on, whether it's diversity, equity, and inclusion, LGBTQ rights, abortion, and other things. It's very obvious to me that DeSantis wants to be the one to be the most conservative in that space, hoping that it will draw in enough Republican voters to win the nomination and then figure out the general election stuff down the line, because those issues, particularly abortion, are not part of a winning combination in a general election context.
Now, outside of the culture war issues, outside of his politics in Florida specifically, what do you see his ability, or how do you see him as his electability outside of Florida on that national scale, outside of specific policies. A lot of people still look at these candidates and say, this is a person I can trust. This is a person that maybe I'd like to have a beer with. Just those very basic things of his electability on the broad scale.
Well, the early returns are not particularly good. While he won a comfortable re-election 2 years ago, he has a likability problem. And I would imagine there is a version of this in Canada, but in the United States, it's not unusual for voters to respond to somebody that they like, to your point with regard to having a beer with, and focus less on qualifications and such. And so he has some work to do in that regard. He's not especially well liked among Republicans nationally, but he's doing well because he's seen as the most viable alternative to Trump. And there are tons of Republicans in the country right now who have been ready to move on for him for some time.
All right, Michael Fontroy with some insight into the GOP Republican nomination. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. Appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.